Yeah, we may, Sterling, I'm glad you popped this up here for everybody that's listening. We all are caught up in the June 30th report where you don't necessarily see a lot of impact in energy, things like that. So we may be feeling some pain from neighboring commodities in the overall market rather than just what comes out in this report today. To remember, I think if you have a report today or don't have a report, and you look at RBOB where it's down or gasoline where it's at, it's going to have to carry it over to us. So just something good to remember.
Yeah, I think we're seeing funds realigning their positions. We've seen this for the last, 5 or 7 days. You saw cotton was limit down for 6 days in a row. It rained in Texas, but it didn't rain 6 days a limit down, and there's some things going on that I think drove that. Once we get past this, but remember, it's also the end of the quarter today. If you're a fund manager and you want your bonus, you're going to take that money to the bank. And if you've had things that are going up, you're going to sell what's going up, and you probably will buy what has gone down. Once we get past this, I think things are going to have to start trading on their own merits, and that's probably good for the grains, depending on how today's report works out. And looking at, and if Mike wants to talk about the drought monitor is getting downright scary, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's I've been out of country for about 10 days. I've been down in Argentina, but I still was able to kind of keep up with what was going on. I talked to Mike, some other agronomists, and one comment that I got from a guy that I trust pretty well is he said that this is whenever we were experiencing those really hot temperatures and no rain here in southern Illinois. And he made the comment that in the heat of that, before we got the big rains that we got last week, he thought there could be 150 bushel acre swings in non-irrigated ground, meaning those light sandy soils could be 50 bushel the acre, and the solid soils could still maintain their 200. And I think we're going to see that. This is going to be one heck of a crop to try to guess across the country because of all the variability, even in neighboring fields. I think it's going to be crazy.
Agreed. I'm seeing some pictures of irrigated, non-irrigated out of Indiana. Amazing the difference with that irrigated.
Yeah.
Corn burning up in the Mid-South too. So
before we get into the report details and things like that, just kind of have some discussion because I've seen something really, really strange occur over the last 7 days. So everybody knows I look a lot at the cash markets and things like that. We look at basis. And Sterling, I'd like your take on this, and I'd also like anybody that's seeing this in their neighborhood to pop in. But one thing that we've seen specifically with ethanol plants over the last 7 days, if you look at the Board of Trade, there's a big inverse between July futures and September. We come to this time of the year and we roll our futures. Everything we base our bids off of gets rolled on corn from July to September in most locations. That's our base futures month. That inverse is around $1.20 without looking. Sterling's got them up here. Now let's say $1.12,
$1.14.
$1.14. All right. Here's one thing that's crazy. 10 days ago, we were 60 over the July for cash delivery into ethanol plants. Today, we're 65 over the September. Do the math there.
Mm-hmm.
You just lost $1 a bushel, basically.
So river markets are holding up pretty well, but it's bizarre to me that this happened across our area in the industry. I don't know if anybody else is seeing that. It's a massive, massive cash move. Whether that is something that's going to regulate itself and they're going to, claw themselves back in the game is a question. But we're seeing a transition here. I mean, Sterling, you touched on it in energies. You said the party may be over, but this cash market's pretty telling of what's going on in ethanol plants. I have this feeling that all of us on this call may be somewhat bullish if we were looking at the market, measuring the market from a crop condition standpoint. But sometimes there's some things in here that we don't see. Sterling, are we seeing something here that's a ghost movement across all markets that's going to take us by surprise?
Well, I think what the ethanol plants are doing is they're testing. they're going to see if they can get any corn at these prices. Why not? We know this time of year supplies are tight. They're going to test it and see if they get any. Now, I switched over my screen here. These are the export sales numbers. I have a word for these. Terrible. They are absolutely terrible. Negative for the soybeans. I mean, this is driven by one of three things. Number one, nobody wants the corn right now. There's no demand. Number two, nobody wants to pay up for the corn at these current prices. Or number three, there is no corn. That's the other thing. I'm not buying any because there isn't any. That's basically the three things that can happen here. So we've seen export sales, and really over the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've really gone downhill. So I think, the ethanol plants, we'll see how they need to get their corn and how much they need. I think ethanol plants are in a little funny spot here. If we look at gasoline prices and things, we've managed to do what high prices need to do. I think they've broken consumer demand a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe the ethanol people, the grinders, they're testing, maybe I can get this a little bit cheaper. We'll see. If it doesn't move, that basis will change. So it'll be real interesting to watch how that basis handles it and how the board handles jumping from July to September. There's a big inverse. Are we going to see July? Are we going to see fund flows coming into September? That is the big question. And if we go back here to my quote board, that September is drawing up in a hurry, but aggregate corn end open interest, if you look at the Tech Tuesday report, caved in hard the last week. Funds checking out, and they're going to check back in because their risk profile is completely changed. Now they look at this and they see, where yields are. We get a surprise today. Maybe that quarterly stocks number isn't quite what it's expected to be for corn. Because right now they're expecting it to be about 4.3. The range on that was, the low was 4, the high was 4.5 billion. 500 million bushel range on where this number is going to land. That is the walking definition of nobody has a clue.
Yeah.
So we'll see where we land.
We got about 10 minutes before the report. Let's kind of go back in time and talk about acres this year. And I think most of our audience are agents. We got a few farmers on here that I see, but most are agents. And I really want you guys to use the chat button. We're really informal here, and I would like for you to use it just to kind of throw in your thoughts along. But back prior to March 31st, we had it in our mind. We had this 90 million mix. That's kind of where we started off. 90 million corn, 90 million beans. Farmers love to plant corn. We know the weather was really, really good. Mike, you've always talked about it. They'll find that 40 or the extra 80 to plant in corn. They didn't find that this year. So we start off the virtual crop tour there in May. March came out. Remind me, Sterling, where were our acres at in March? We put beans on top slightly, but what were our acres at officially?
Let me grab that so I don't misquote it here. I had it here. It's in yesterday's.
While he's looking that up, Mike, we looked at May, and we had this mess in May in our hands. We had Texas burning up, and for most part, a lot of the crop in Texas still is challenged right now. Western Oklahoma the same way. We got some of those that relief rain in Kansas that kind of got us by. Nebraska looked pretty solid. The Dakotas, the further north you went, North Dakota couldn't get out of getting rains. I thought there was going to be a tremendous amount of prevent plant in Minnesota, North Dakota, that South Dakota corridor, a little bit of Wisconsin. It doesn't look like that was the case. It looks like there's been some type of switch over to soybeans. And then parts of Ohio, I know we got some folks on here from Ohio, have been a mess, especially in that northwestern part of Ohio. Maybe some more prevent plant than we thought, but I can't help but think that Ohio, a little bit of that Indiana corridor, mixed with North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, has had to boost some soybean acres. They tended to get them in the ground. At least that's what it looks like from our perspective. It sure feels like soybeans could be higher from that March number. Sterling, where were those March numbers at?
Okay, so for corn, The March planting intentions was 89.5 million acres. The Wall Street and analyst guess for today's report is 89.8. So seeing a little bit, but nothing, nothing too shocking. The 91.0 for soybeans were the March report, and Street's looking for 90.6. So basically, moving 300 from beans to corn was the go-to move there. Now we compare this to last year. We had 92 million planted for corn, soybeans 87 million.
So we've picked up acres net. I'm curious. Use your chat box. I'm going to go with a higher bean number than the March number, even the industry guess today. That's my take on this thing. That's reality of what's going on. Chat in there if you disagree or agree with that. But I'm going to go with a little higher number of beans at the expense of corn overall, but modest. I think a lot of corn got planted. It's just super, super late. Mike, our VCT is showing 2 to 3 weeks on average on our survey behind our normal pollination windows. Are you still sticking with that, or do you think that warm June moved that window up a little bit?
I think we moved it up some, Brooks, but unfortunately we had so much leaf rolling that we're losing some of those extra growing degree days. So I think right now we're probably 7-10 days behind normal. So probably looking at July 10th to the 14th is probably the big window throughout the ice states anyway. And down south, unfortunately, a lot of that corn is pollinating now and burning up. So not good down there.
Yeah, the forecast isn't really too friendly over the next couple weeks. I know here in Omaha, we were supposed to get some rain overnight. It did not happen. Temperatures they're turning the heat back up. We may get, it's back to that 10 to 20% every day, and it never happens sort of situation. And I've noticed my yard is starting to take a turn for the worse, and I would not be too surprised to see non-irrigated stuff here start to feel some suffering. The real concern is that dry land stuff east of me gets hot, pollination's late, and we're doing it in, middle to later July heat. That's not going to be a good thing. That's going to be
for Nebraska too. A lot of the irrigators never got fixed after the storm, so we're going to have some irrigated ground acting like non-irrigated too in Nebraska.
Yeah, there were a number of hard storms that knocked out a lot of irrigation stuff, and guys can't get parts. So, it's been a problem, and it's not just been one location. It's been meaningfully going on around here.
We in that first virtual crop tour week, we kind of referred to the crop as a long. You've seen that mentioned last week, and boy, it sure feels like it hung in the race a while, but there's a lot of things going against the crop right now, in my opinion. I mean, even when in areas where it's solid, there's high variability if you get off the beaten path. I think if you drove I-70 across Indiana, Illinois, and then switched over and went through Iowa up there, I maybe 74 would be a better interstate. I think you're going to think the crop looks excellent. But if you get off the beaten path very well, I think you're going to see rest areas, which kind of talks about yield. Or I hate this time of the year because we kind of know it could be an okay crop, and I think that's where we're at. Mike, yield trend on corn, trend line 177, over or under in your opinion at this moment in time?
Probably under, Brooks, based on how far behind the crop is in the Dakotas and the Northern Belt. And like I say, no one's really talking about the South, but Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, parts of Texas, and that crop's pretty well past the point of rain. So it's going to be tough to make trend based on what I'm seeing today. And again, just close as my backyard in Champaign County, moderate drought, make good soils there, but it can only last so long. So yeah, I wish the corn was all pollinated today. Then the rain would matter much. But like Sterling said, we're pushing that pollination back, more chance for hot, dry, and that forecast will be critical.
Yeah, 177. When we look at the balance sheet, we'll have a lot clearer picture on what the acres are going to be here shortly. 177, we're looking at that balance sheet being very tight, 1.3 to 1.4. 177 is going to be a miracle. I think, really, given the way that weather is, and unless things turn on a dime, 172, 173 is probably a more realistic idea. So we shred 300 million in production, 250 to 300. All of a sudden, you're looking at a 1 billion balance sheet, depending on where that quarterly stocks number comes out too. Because if that comes out surprisingly lower, all of a sudden we're very tight on corn.
Yeah. So you look at the market, and based on what we just said, the market ought to be up 20 cents, and you see that steep red that Sterling turned on there. So again, I think what we're seeing early this morning really doesn't have a lot to do with what the anticipation of these numbers on the report are. I think it's more of a general sell-off in being copacetic with energies and things like that. But we'll see what happens here shortly. And in June 30th, what a terrible time of the year to try to have a report out there. You don't know what's coming in the next 2 weeks. Short-dated options expire right here, and a lot of people are trying to decide, do I buy more protection? Do I just go ahead and sell cash? Well, I don't want to sell cash if I don't have that crop. This is a high-stress period time for farmers that are good at marketing or have to make marketing decisions. It's a tough time.
Brooks, which screen am I sharing? Am I sharing the report screen or am I sharing the quote page?
I've got the exports. I've got your net exports on there, so we're not back.
So we've got the report page up. That's good because we're about 2 minutes away from report time there. It's it's 10:57. My clock is set to Eastern time.
And just to be sure on here, that is you do have the report page up there. It's going to tick on. So this is a little different page than what we normally see, where we've got the guesses on there. Correct? I don't see any.
Nope, we've got the guesses right here. Here are the acreage guesses. Okay. And here are the quarterly stocks. It's different because we had two reports today. We had the export sales report, which they don't publish the survey numbers. But right here, quarterly for corn, 4.3 was the average. Beans, 9.53. And then for all wheat, it looks like, I believe the all wheat number was about 655, if I remember right. That's about where I was, about 655. I was a little bit lower than this. I was about 910 on the beans. I was very much lower on the corn. I was at 41. I think corn's a lot tighter than what people are letting us know about. And for acreage, I was pretty much in line with everybody else. I didn't think anything too special probably is going to happen there. So we'll see where we're at when this hits. So yeah, it's very interesting. Normally in front of a report, we don't see, corn and beans down that much. Nobody usually wants to take that position on. But again, it is the last day of the quarter. I'm seeing a lot of very interesting gyrations in other markets. Interest rates have gotten a lot friendlier in the last 2 weeks. The stock market is trading wildly again, but well off the lows of the day. And we're seeing a change in habit here where market's weak in the morning and starting to pick up in the afternoon, which means there may be a little bit of a sea change going on. And obviously the crude oil is going to affect the inflation ideas, assuming it can stay below $1.10 a barrel, 110 a barrel.
Remind me, Sterling, after we get report news, I've had several texts about farmers wanting to protect some of the sales they've got where they don't know if they're going to have the production or if they're just worried about. I've got a few extreme examples where they're worried about surpassing insurance coverage levels, so buying some $10 plus protection on corn. I'm going to cover that a little bit post-report. I know we're getting close here, so just remind me to do that here.
Yeah, we'll go over that. Also, remember today is the last day of the market call. And if you have a problem, please email us. It's very, very simple to do. If you just Google ASNA, Ag Market Brief, Podbean, just Google that. It'll take you right to it. And you can get yourself set up very easily.
And we got a lot of people I know that are disappointed in the fact that that daily market call was out there, but we were so limited by time and the amount of information that you can get. Once you get on this new system, and I know there's always growing pains with it, you're going to like it a lot better because it's more thorough. It allows you to access more information than just a quote system. It's a change, and I know nobody likes it, but in time, I think it will be a much higher quality tool that you can utilize.
And the voice quality is, I listened to a bunch of mine, half the time you can't hear me. It gets staticky. There's all sorts of problems, and that's on my phone that I recorded on all state-of-the-art stuff. And if I can't hear it, I know they're having trouble out there. So, and, we got a report here, folks. We should be paying attention here. Quarterly stocks for corn came in at 43.46, just as expected. The acreage numbers are not out yet.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here, but we do have the quarterly stocks for soybeans, 971, a little bigger than expected. 660 for all wheat.
Okay.
Let's see here. Let's see here if I can get you some acreage numbers here. Hold on here. Let's see.
There they are.
And we got some. Up there we go. There's the acreage numbers. And corn 8.992. That's pretty much a little bigger than expected. Soybeans 88.325. So you got a little bit lower soybean acres. We got and we got markets moving here. Let me switch away from this other boring stuff and let's get to the markets. Stop sharing very quickly. Share and try that. Screen one. Share. And there we go. We should have some quotes. Soybeans sharply higher here. We're now up 28 cents. We've reversed about 30 cents. Corn actually only down 4. We'll call that a win. We were down 14, so that's solid performance there.
And we can attribute this all. Somebody in Chicago listened to us prior to this report release and talked about how bullish we are. So we're market movers.
Well, that's the bull is running uphill right at the moment, but we get past the 4th of July holiday, it's a new game. It's a new second half of the year, and I think it's going to be very different from the first half of the year for a lot of things that don't necessarily always trade on their own merits, and grains can only trade on their merits. So.
Interesting to see there, corn down about 7 or 8, beans up about 20, roughly. That bean acreage number, Sterling, let's talk about that for a second. Luckily, I wasn't the only fool that called for a higher bean number. I did have a couple of friends that used the chat box and thought bean higher as well, at least in their areas. What gives there? How can we lose bean acres overall? That sounds crazy to me.
Well, you probably had a situation where you had weather get in the way and you couldn't plant. That would be the first thing. Or you committed to corn early and just did not come back in and get the beans. 2, there's another possibility here that the USDA could come back in here and adjust the soybean acre down the road to compensate for late planted beans. That's the other thing we need to think about, where we are with USDA cutoff dates. But yes, the soybean number is a bit of a surprise. So
anything on wheat? Wheat looks like it's the one that's really just kind of treading water right here. Anything in wheat that is surprising to you at all?
Wheat acreage exactly as expected. Wheat stocks again exactly as expected, or within 5. So nothing market moving there. So this is a very very interesting number. And, you think about, where we were at the March report and where we were, the survey here, we were pretty close to what the survey actually was for the soybeans. And but just how much short we are from last year and just a little bit better for beans. So I'm going to run this back through the balance sheets here, but this is not going to be our harvested number really from where we were on the June report. June WASDE isn't going to change that much, really.
Mike, back to the pollination numbers. I mean, we're going to switch over. I think there's going to be some doubt in that soybean number, and I think Sterling mentioned that the likelihood of these numbers changing is still very, very high, especially with the year that we had in the late planting. So this report may not carry the weight that it does most years, but back to this pollination thing. Jason on here, probably our most extreme northern person on the call. And, he's in North Dakota. 50, 60 miles from the Canadian line. And, his corn, some of that corn's been in the ground now 4 weeks. 4 weeks up there. I mean, this pollination window is going to go well into August in a lot of portions of the country. So, we've got a wider window of weather to watch probably this year than we've had in a long, long time.
Agreed.
Which is probably more volatility, where we have that market volatility window, sterling June 15 through July 10th, that it's at its highest on corn. We may have very well moved that market volatility back a little bit with that pollination window this year.
Absolutely. I think given everything that's going on, and particularly, we still have to think about the Ukraine and the situation with that's still going on and still a factor. I think really when we get past the 4th of July holiday next week and we come in Tuesday, Wednesday, it's going to be game on. I think we're going to have weather. The funds will have adjusted their positions away from, they were sitting in the old crop. They're now in a new risk profile. Their positions are going to be smaller. And guess what that means? That means they've got firepower. They've got maneuverability. And that's something that I think can certainly increase volatility, particularly if we have a couple of predictions to rain and they don't verify. That would be the thing that would really, I think, get this market really nervous.
Emotions right now from a farmer standpoint on marketing, they're so tied to the weather they've had over the last 7 days. So in my area in Southern Illinois 10 days ago, and there's a couple of agents on here that have got farmers down here, the farmers were ready to throw in the towel. The crop looked horrible, Mike. It was rolling during the day. They got this unexpected rain. I mean, it's a blessing, 2 or 3 inches. In some places, a little bit more than that. Very optimistic today. The corn's back to looking good. Go 2 counties to the where they completely missed these rains, and those are where I'm starting to get the calls. And here's the questions that I get. I think a lot of you are going to get these too. I've got corn sold. I don't know if I'm going to produce it. What can I do to protect myself? There's a couple of things, and I want to touch on this because we're not very good at this as an industry. If you are an agent on this call today, make sure that you let your customer know when they are protected against cancellation. Here's what's tricky. If they call the elevator, you guys have all heard me say this. I know I got Aaron on here who's got commercial grain elevator experience. National Grain and Feed Association rules dictate that if you say you can't perform on that contract as a farmer, they have to cancel that contract within 24 hours, and you're out. When is your crop insurance going to protect you? They're going to protect you during the month of October if that price is higher than spring, and we think it's going to be higher than the projected price. Odds are that it will be. And it's really important to know that if you do cancel out here and that market comes down, we've got problems. So we got to be careful on the advice we give farmers about canceling their contracts. And they come to the agent. I think the agent's the respected person in this. There are some alternatives to buy some call options, and I would do this out of the money. So we're buying call options up above the market just in case the market runs. Your extreme bullish farmers right now are worried that maybe the market could get so high that it surpasses protection levels that we have in the fall. That's doubtful. The odds are very, very much stacked against that, but nonetheless, a call option is not a bad way to protect ourselves. The other thing is if they're super bullish and they think this market's going to $9, a call option is a way for them to kind of have this stop loss on a contract that they've sold to the elevator of where they have to buy that out of the market. They have some protection if the market goes up. So for the first time in a long time, I would tell you that buying a call option is not a foolish thing right now, but it needs to be used in specific situations. It needs to be used in extreme where areas we kind of know we've already taken bushels off, and in areas that a farmer really, really understands the repercussions of a higher price. The main thing is, back to this whole discussion, is be very careful on giving advice on when when a farmer should cancel a contract due to loss in the field, because they do not have protection against that loss at today's price. They don't have it yet. They won't have anything until October. And a lot of times, Mike, you've seen this. You go out to the field, you think it's a complete disaster, and there's a little bit of surprise when there's a harvest, some bushels to be harvested. So just a few things on marketing.
Yeah. And here, up on my screen, I've put up the call prices here. Right now, December corn is at 643.5. And, looking here, the 850 call has at least some activity. And that right now will run you just about a dime. It'll run you 10 cents a bushel for the 850.
So that's, that's a good spot. You're not spending a lot of money. I shouldn't say this. It's kind of like buying that insurance policy against that big run up in the markets. Sterling, paint me a scenario. We've already kind of got Ukraine off the books. I mean, I know it's not there from a U.S.A. perspective, but I think in the cash market, Ukraine is kind of taken out of the books. What does it take to get the market to $10 from this point in time?
Okay, $10 is going to be a problem. I think when we get above $8.50, we start smacking demand hard, especially if we can't see cattle prices rise substantially. That is going to hurt demand on one side. Now, if we hurt yields, and we hurt yields noticeably, we take yields to 168. That would take about 10 bushels an acre off. That's going to cut production. Things are going to blow up. There's another thing that's going on that we need to pay close attention to. And if you're listening to my livestock podcast, hog prices in China are up 30% in a week. Okay? They're coming off lockdown in Shanghai and Beijing. They're hungry. And guess what? These people have been locked up. The Chinese government is not going to get in the way of making sure there's plenty of hogs. So, seeing Chinese hog herd expansion happening, seeing them come in and buy the corn and soybeans they need to feed said hogs and pigs is a very real possibility. So we could have a situation where the Chinese government doesn't really care what they pay for corn, and we get to something where, all of a sudden trading north of 8 or 8.50 becomes a potentiality. Particularly, again, if we see yields move back meaningfully, because we just don't have the room in the global balance sheet. For that matter, we don't have in the domestic balance sheet either.
It's one of those few times. I mean, normally at this time of the year, we, the thought of Ukraine producing or not producing, we don't even have the thought. I've never had that discussion on a June 30th report before. We've got some Chinese concerns, especially when Sterling went through the export numbers this morning. We've got that geopolitical thing in there that it may actually trump the weather that we've seen so far, Mike, which is unheard of. We're all weather, and I know it's going to be a front runner over the next 4 weeks, but we haven't had these variables from the outside that we're experiencing this year. I mean, this is something we haven't, at least in my career.
No, well, we're definitely seeing a clash of different variables here. And, corn's back down 20 cents here, which one thing, this corn, it's bad. You're losing, all of a sudden your corn's worth 20 cents less. Seeing a break in price is a real good way to stoke some export business. You take a little bit of the edge off these prices, people are a lot more inclined to buy it. And especially if they have any sort of nervousness, we're getting at a level D here at 630. I got to think we're starting to look and think about getting some coverage.
Yeah. So the call option idea that we talked about, again, it's kind of the same thing. May give us an opportunity if you've got some farmers that are a little bit antsy about what they've got sold or a little bit concerned about higher prices. I know that's kind of a silly thing to say when you've got someone who produces that's worried about higher prices, but if they've got that concern for whatever reason, maybe an opportunity to buy a call option. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is something that's out there. And there's a time for it, and this may be a time for a select few people. I would not say that for every farmer out there, but there are some cases where that could be the case.
No, yeah. As always, everything is an individual decision, and we have to tailor things to what your details are. But if you've made some cash sales previously and you want to maybe take a little re-ownership here, I'm not going to say that's going to be the worst idea I've ever heard, because again, this crop is far from made, and we do have enough weather issues and a tight enough balance sheet that this little thunderstorm that's being caused by inflation trades getting unwound is going to pass. And I'm willing to guess that it's probably in front of a holiday at the end of the quarter. Is probably a pretty good time to get your stuff cleaned up if you want to get it cleaned up if you're a fund manager.
Yeah. Well, a lot of information. I'm shocked at the bean number. I'm surprised that low. Outside of that, like Sterling said, corn's back to where it was at prior to the report. The numbers are what they are. I'll say that if I have one prediction, the numbers will change substantially by August, and that number. Look for what is the date on that this year, Sterling? Is it August 10th or 12th? Right through there, we're going to have an update of acres.
Yeah, I think it's August 12th when the FSA number comes out. I'll have to look that up. But we're going to have that. But right now, everything is going to turn and look on yields probably starting next week. Again, as the fund situation gets through what they're going through.
Well, if you got any questions, especially on the marketing side, get a hold of us. Mike is in demand right now, too, with a lot of agronomy questions. I've hit him with several over the last 2 or 3 weeks. When you see that stress in the field, that's usually when the agronomist swoops in and has to give you some good advice. But we're here. If anybody's got customers with questions, I'm more than happy to accommodate. Sterling, any final thoughts on this thing today?
No, I think it'll be interesting to see where we actually finish the day. I think that's going to be the biggest question. The other thing, one of the things we haven't talked about here is our little friend, the dollar. And the dollar has been ridiculously strong against two currencies, particularly the yen and to a lesser degree the euro, although that got pounded. We're a little bit lower yesterday. And, we did owe the world a little bit of a comeuppance. Grain prices had held up pretty good with the dollar being in really since January, a pretty solid uptrend. So we'll probably do a little bit of a comeuppance here. Here's the thing. I don't know. This, crude oil, well, if the inflation story dies quickly, which is possible, entirely conceivable, the dollar's going to take a nosedive. And that will be decidedly supportive for grain prices.
Along those lines, Sterling, I mentioned I was in Argentina last week, and I paid a little bit of attention to the conversion rates over the last 6 months in preparation for going down. I guess I was shocked at the volatility between the Argentine peso and the U.S. dollar. I can't imagine being a farmer down in Argentina. There's two things that jumped out at me. Just imagine this. Can you imagine paying your input or not buying your input and seeing the volatility that they see in their currency? I mean, it's absolutely crazy. I know Sterling's punching some numbers, and I think he's probably looking for that right now to illustrate it. So it was about
bringing up the Argentine.
Around 124 to 1 there.
125.21. This is the official rate, not the blue rate. The blue rate's probably 124.
Look at this.
But as you can see,
this is crazy. It's crazy. In February, I mean, granted, they're a season behind us, so we're 6 months ahead or behind, however you want to look at it. But put yourself in this perspective very quickly, because this dollar thing is important. You're an Argentine farmer, and let's just pretend, that they're on our calendar terms. You paid for inputs in March, farmer in the U.S. And look what your currency has done here. But you may not have sold your crop. You want to talk about something that's absolutely crazy. This volatility would keep me up at night if I was down there. And then to boot, if you read the VCT last week, I got to visit with a farmer down there, and he was delivering into Diamante, which is a big, I call it it serves an export market on the Paranal River, and there's a 35% export tax. And that export tax fluctuates all the time. You never know what it's going to be. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it could be 17%, it could be 30%. And then you add this on top of it, oh, it would be no fun to be down there in the farming business.
And that's why people prefer doing business with the U.S. or Brazil when they can.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that, creates some problems for them, and they have all sorts of unique Argentinian things that are going on.
Well, I think we've just about shown everything that we can show for today's market. The numbers are what they are. I think they're going to change. I wouldn't put a lot of faith in 88.8 on beans, honestly. I think that number can change significantly. I know a couple of you have shared those opinions with me on text and also on chat, so it's nice to know I'm not alone.
And we have to remember that this is a planted acre. Only matters what you harvest. So where are diesel prices going to be? What happens to that field that wasn't so well nourished and it didn't rain on? Well, does it pay to harvest it or not? You know, there may be potential for more of that going on. So again, just another thing on the edge that's going to induce some volatility.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, Christy, I think we're ready to wrap things up. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm not sure what the report will bring by the end of the day, but we'll know whether it was friendly or unfriendly here in a few hours.
Well, yeah, it's definitely friendly for the beans. The beans are definitely picking up. Who knows where the corn is going to end up? There's things going on. So.
Yep. All right. Everybody have a great day, and we will talk to you next time around.
Yes, we do. We want to thank you all for joining us today. It has been enlightening for sure. We do want to remind you that our call did end. We do have the podcast, and we put the links in there, so make sure that you do subscribe to our podcast. And there is a link in there also that shows a video for how to subscribe, and I also put a link in there for our virtual crop tour, so make sure you're joining in for that. All right, thank you all.